Hey Cancer, welcome back to another weekly reading. And honestly, when I laid out these cards for you this week, I had to pause for a second because what came through is actually really beautiful. I am not someone who throws around the word perfect lightly when it comes to tarot spreads, but this week the cards are telling such a cohesive story for you that I genuinely got excited while I was shuffling. So let me share what the universe wants you to know for October 13th through the 19th. Before I dive into the specific cards, I just want to say that the overall energy here feels like something is finally clicking into place for you. Like you have been waiting for certain pieces to come together. And this week, those pieces are not just falling into place randomly, but they are creating something that actually makes sense. The cards are showing me a journey that starts with emotional clarity and ends with you standing in a completely transformed version of your life. And I mean that in the most genuine way possible. So let me start pulling these cards and walking you through what I am seeing, because each one builds on the last in such an interesting way. The first card I pulled for you is the Knight of Cups and Cancer. This is already telling me so much about the energy you are stepping into this week. The Knight of Cups is that beautiful, romantic, dreamy energy, but it is not just about romance in the traditional sense. This card is about emotional offers, creative inspiration, and someone or something approaching you with genuine, heartfelt intention. What I find really interesting about this card appearing for you right now is that it suggests you are either going to receive an emotional invitation or you yourself are going to step into this role of being the one who extends the olive branch or makes the first move emotionally. Let me break this down a bit more, because the Knight of Cups is not a passive card, even though Cups energy can sometimes feel receptive. This Knight is active, he is moving towards something or someone with his cup extended, and that cup represents emotional truth. So for you, Cancer, this could manifest in a few different ways, depending on what is happening in your life right now. If you have been waiting for someone to reach out to you or to express how they really feel, this card is saying that is coming. But more than that, I think the Knight of Cups is asking you to embody this energy yourself. What would it look like for you to approach a situation this week with your heart fully open, with creativity and emotional honesty leading the way instead of fear or overthinking? For some of you, this might be about a romantic connection where someone is finally ready to be vulnerable with you, or where you are ready to be vulnerable with them. But for others, this could be about a creative project that you have been holding back on because you were not sure if it was good enough or if people would receive it well. The Knight of Cups says, stop waiting for the perfect moment and just let your heart lead. There is something so pure about this card's energy. And I think that is what you need right now, Cancer. You need permission to be emotional, to be romantic, to be idealistic without feeling like you have to justify it or protect yourself from disappointment. The other thing about the Knight of Cups that I want you to pay attention to is that he is moving forward. He is not standing still with his cup. He is actively bringing that emotional energy somewhere. So this week, I want you to think about where you have been holding back emotionally and what it would take for you to actually move in that direction. Maybe it is sending that text you have been drafting in your head for weeks. Maybe it is finally sharing your work with someone whose opinion you value. Maybe it is just allowing yourself to feel hopeful about something again without immediately shutting it down with worst-case scenarios. The Knight of Cups is here to remind you that emotional risk is not the same as emotional recklessness, and sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is let yourself want something out loud. Now the second card, and this is where things start to get really interesting, is the Hermit. At first glance, you might think, okay, we just had this beautiful, forward-moving emotional energy with the Knight of Cups, and now we are pulling back with the Hermit, but actually these two cards work together in a really profound way. The Hermit is card number 10 in the Major Arcana, and it represents introspection, inner wisdom, and the need to sometimes step away from the noise of the external world to really hear your own truth. What I love about the Hermit appearing after the Knight of Cups is that it is telling you that any emotional movement you make this week needs to come from a place of deep inner knowing. You are not being asked to just react emotionally or to chase after something because it feels good in the moment. Instead, the Hermit is saying, Take time to really listen to what your soul is telling you. There is wisdom inside of you right now that you have been cultivating through all of your experiences, and especially through any difficult times you have moved through recently, and that wisdom is ready to guide you. The Hermit often shows up when we need to be our own counsel, when we need to trust that we already have the answers we are looking for. So Cancer, if you have been seeking validation from others or waiting for someone else to tell you what the right move is, this card is a gentle but firm reminder that you already know. You might not want to know, you might wish the answer was different, but somewhere in the quiet of your own heart, you know what is true, and you know what you need to do. I also want to talk about the lantern that the Hermit carries, because this is such an important symbol. The lantern represents the light of inner wisdom and truth, and the Hermit does not use that light to illuminate the entire path ahead. He only lights up the next few steps. I think that is really relevant for you this week because you might be feeling pressure to have everything figured out, to know exactly how things are going to unfold. But the Hermit says you do not need to see the whole journey right now. You just need to trust the next step that is being illuminated for you. That is enough. So practically speaking, this might mean carving out some alone time this week, even if your schedule feels packed. It might mean journaling or meditating or just taking a long walk without your phone so you can actually hear your own thoughts. The Hermit is not about isolation for the sake of being alone. It is about creating the conditions where your inner voice can actually speak to you without being drowned out by everyone else's opinions and expectations. And for you, Cancer, as someone who is naturally empathetic and who tends to absorb other people's emotions, this kind of intentional solitude can be incredibly healing and clarifying. There is also something here about not rushing. The Hermit moves slowly and deliberately, and I think that is part of the message for you this week. Even though the Knight of Cups has this forward momentum, the overall energy is not about rushing into anything. It is about moving with intention, with wisdom, with a deep sense of knowing why you are taking each step. The third card I pulled is the Six of Cups and Cancer. This is such a tender card, and it adds another beautiful layer to this reading. The Six of Cups is often associated with nostalgia, innocence, childhood memories, and sometimes reconnection with people from your past. But more than that, it represents a return to a state of emotional purity and joy. It is about remembering what it felt like to love freely, to trust easily, to believe in magic before life taught you to be cynical or guarded. What strikes me about the Six of Cups appearing in this spread is that it suggests you are in a phase of healing some old emotional wounds, particularly around how you give and receive love. This card often shows up when we are ready to revisit past experiences, not to dwell in them, but to extract the lessons and the sweetness that we might have overlooked the first time around. Maybe there is someone from your past who you have been thinking about lately, or maybe you are just finding yourself reflecting on old memories and relationships and wondering what they meant. The Six of Cups can also indicate that someone from your past might reach out to you this week, or that you might feel called to reach out to them. But here is what I want you to consider, Cancer. This card is not necessarily about rekindling old flames or going backwards in your life. Instead, it is about integrating the past with where you are now. It is about recognizing that every person you have loved and every experience you have had has shaped you into who you are today. And there is value in honoring that without necessarily needing to recreate it. For some of you, the Six of Cups might be more literal. Maybe you are actually going to cross paths with someone you used to know, or maybe you will hear news about someone who was once important to you. But for others, this is more symbolic. It is about reconnecting with parts of yourself that you left behind as you grew up. What did you used to love doing before you convinced yourself it was impractical or childish? What brought you joy before you started measuring everything against whether it was productive or valuable? The Six of Cups invites you to bring some of that innocent joy back into your life. There is also a beautiful theme of generosity in this card. The traditional imagery shows one child offering a cup filled with flowers to another child, and there is something so pure about that gesture. It is giving without expectation, sharing without keeping score. Cancer, you are naturally a giving person, but sometimes you give in ways that deplete you because you are hoping for a specific response or because you feel obligated. The Six of Cups asks you to rediscover what it feels like to give from overflow, to share your love and your gifts simply because it brings you joy to do so, not because you are trying to earn love or prove your worth. I am also sensing that this card might be encouraging you to bring more playfulness into your life this week. When was the last time you did something just for fun? When was the last time you let yourself be silly or spontaneous without worrying about how it looked or whether it was the responsible choice? The Six of Cups says it is time to lighten up a little bit and to remember that life is meant to be enjoyed, not just endured. Now we move to the fourth card, which is Judgment in Cancer. This is where the reading takes on this really powerful transformative quality. Judgment is card number 21 in the major arcana, and it represents awakening, renewal, reckoning, and the moment when everything becomes clear. This is not about being judged by others or judging yourself harshly. Instead, it is about that profound moment of clarity when you finally see the truth of a situation, or when you are ready to answer a calling that you have been ignoring. Judgment often appears when we are at the end of a significant cycle and ready to step into a new phase of life. It is about integration, about taking all of the lessons and experiences you have accumulated and using them to rise to a new level of consciousness or being. What I love about this card appearing in your spread, Cancer, is that it suggests you are ready for something that you were not ready for before. Whatever healing work you have been doing, whatever self-reflection you have been engaged in, it is bringing you to this moment of readiness. There is an element of resurrection with the Judgment card. The traditional imagery shows people rising from their graves, answering the call of an angel's trumpet. This is about things that you thought were dead or finished coming back to life in a new form. Maybe it is a dream you gave up on that is suddenly feeling possible again. Maybe it is a relationship you thought was over that is transforming into something different and potentially more meaningful. Maybe it is just your own sense of self and purpose being reborn after a period of confusion or loss. I want you to really sit with this idea of answering a call, because that is what Judgment is ultimately about. There is something or someone calling to you right now, and the question is whether you are going to answer. Are you going to step into this new version of yourself that is emerging? Are you going to say yes to the opportunities that are presenting themselves even if they feel scary or unfamiliar? The Judgment card says you are ready even if you do not feel ready, and that is an important distinction. Readiness is not always about feeling confident or having all the answers. Sometimes it is just about being willing to take the leap. This card can also indicate a moment of reckoning with your past. Not in a punishing way, but in a way that allows you to finally make peace with things that have been weighing on you. Maybe you need to forgive yourself for something. Maybe you need to forgive someone else. Maybe you just need to acknowledge that you did the best you could with what you knew at the time, and that is enough. Judgment clears the slate so you can move forward without carrying unnecessary baggage. For you, Cancer, I think Judgment is asking you to really evaluate where you are in your life and whether it aligns with who you actually are and who you want to become. Are you living according to your own values, or are you living according to what you think you should be doing? Are you making choices that honor your authentic self, or are you performing a version of yourself that you think will be more acceptable to others? These are big questions, but the Judgment card says you are ready to answer them honestly and then to make whatever changes are necessary to live in greater alignment with your truth. The fifth card is the Ten of Swords in Cancer. I know this might look alarming at first, because the Ten of Swords has a reputation for being one of the more difficult cards in the deck. The traditional imagery shows a figure lying face down with 10 swords in their back, and it is often associated with betrayal, defeat, painful endings, and hitting rock bottom. But here is what I want you to understand about this card appearing in your reading. The Ten of Swords is not about things getting worse. It is about things finally being over. Let me explain what I mean. The Ten of Swords represents the absolute completion of a difficult cycle. It is the moment when you cannot deny the truth anymore, when the thing you have been trying to save or fix or hold on to finally ends and you have no choice but to accept it. But the reason this card is actually a gift, even though it does not feel like one in the moment, is because it brings closure. It brings finality. And as painful as endings are, they also create space for new beginnings. What I'm sensing for you, Cancer, is that there is something you have been holding on to that needs to end. It might be a relationship that has run its course. It might be a job or a living situation that is no longer serving you. It might be a belief about yourself or about life that is limiting you. It might even be a way of thinking or behaving that used to protect you but is now just keeping you stuck. The Ten of Swords says it is time to let it die. And I know that sounds harsh, but I mean it in the kindest way possible. Some things need to end so that other things can begin. The Ten of Swords also speaks to mental anguish and overthinking, which I know is something you can relate to, Cancer. Sometimes the swords in your back are not put there by other people. They are the thoughts you keep stabbing yourself with. The stories you tell yourself about why you are not enough, or why things will never work out, or why you should have done something differently. The Ten of Swords asks you to pull those swords out. Stop replaying the painful moments. Stop torturing yourself with what ifs and should haves. It is over. Whatever it is done. And continuing to mentally revisit it is only prolonging your suffering. But here's the really important part about the Ten of Swords that often gets overlooked. In many depictions of this card, the sky in the background is starting to lighten. Dawn is coming. The darkest moment is just before the light returns. So yes, this card can represent a painful ending or a moment of defeat, but it also promises that relief is coming. The worst is over. You have survived. Now it is time to get up and start moving forward. I also want you to consider that the Ten of Swords might be about releasing victim mentality. I do not mean that to sound harsh, because I know you have been through real difficult things. But sometimes we get so identified with our pain and our struggles that we do not know who we are without them. The Ten of Swords invites you to stop seeing yourself as someone things happen to and to start seeing yourself as someone who has the power to choose what comes next. Yes, things happened. Yes, they hurt. But they do not define you unless you let them. The sixth and final card in your spread is the Fool and Cancer. This is such a perfect way to end this reading because the Fool represents new beginnings, infinite potential, and the courage to step into the unknown. The Fool is card number 1 in the major arcana, or sometimes card 0 depending on how you number it, and it represents that moment when you stand at the edge of a cliff, ready to take a leap of faith into something completely new. What I love about the Fool appearing after the Ten of Swords is that it shows the natural progression from ending to beginning. You cannot have a true new beginning without first ending what came before. The Ten of Swords clears the slate, and the Fool says, okay, now what are you going to create? The Fool does not carry baggage. The Fool travels light with just a small knapsack containing only what is essential. This is your invitation to leave behind everything that is weighing you down and to step forward into your life with a sense of openness and curiosity. The Fool is often seen as naive or reckless because he appears to be walking off a cliff without looking where he is going. But I interpret this differently. I think the Fool is not ignorant of the risk, he is just more interested in the possibility. He trusts that the universe will catch him or that he will figure it out as he goes. And honestly, Cancer, that kind of trust is what you need right now. You have been through the difficulty represented by the Ten of Swords. You have done the inner work suggested by the Hermit. You have opened your heart like the Knight of Cups and reconnected with joy like the Six of Cups. You have answered the call of judgment. Now it is time to actually take the leap. The Fool represents beginner's mind, which is the ability to approach life with freshness and wonder, as if you are experiencing everything for the first time. Even if you have been hurt before, even if you have failed before, the Fool says you get to start again. You get to try something new. You get to believe in possibility again. This card is permission to not have it all figured out, to not know exactly how things are going to turn out, and to be okay with that. For you, Cancer, I think the Fool is specifically about being willing to take an emotional or creative risk. Maybe it is finally putting yourself out there in the dating world after a period of healing. Maybe it is starting that creative project you have been thinking about forever. Maybe it is making a big life change like moving to a new place or changing careers. Whatever it is. The Fool says the time is now and you do not need to wait until you feel completely ready or until all the conditions are perfect. You just need to take the first step and trust that the path will reveal itself as you walk it. There is also something incredibly joyful and liberated about the Fool's energy. After all the heaviness and intensity of the other cards, the Fool is like a breath of fresh air. He reminds you that life is an adventure meant to be lived fully, not a test you are trying to pass. He encourages playfulness, spontaneity, and the willingness to look foolish sometimes in pursuit of what makes you feel alive. So Cancer. When I look at this spread as a whole, what I see is a complete journey from emotional opening to inner wisdom, to nostalgic healing, to profound awakening, to necessary ending, and finally, to bold new beginning. This is not just a week in your life. This is a pivotal moment where you have the opportunity to completely transform your relationship with yourself and with your future. The cards are not just predicting what will happen. They are showing you what is possible if you are willing to engage with this energy consciously and courageously. The spread really does feel perfect because each card builds on the one before it in such a natural and necessary way. You cannot skip steps in this journey. You need the emotional clarity of the Knight of Cups to fuel your inner work with the Hermit. You need the healing nostalgia of the Six of Cups to answer the awakening call of Judgment. You need the complete ending of the Ten of Swords to make space for the fresh beginning of the Fool. It all works together. If I had to give you one piece of advice for this week based on these cards, it would be this: trust the process even when it is uncomfortable. Trust that endings are making way for beginnings. Trust that the time you spend in introspection is not wasted, but essential. Trust that your heart knows what it wants, even if your head is trying to talk you out of it. And most of all, trust that you are ready for whatever comes next, even if it does not feel like it yet. I would love to hear from you in the comments if any of this resonates, or if you have questions about how these cards might apply to your specific situation. Sometimes readings speak to us in unexpected ways, and I am always curious to hear what lands for people. Thank you so much for being here, Cancer, and I will see you next week.